Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. As part of the series of accounting standards discussion, today let us focus on accounting standard 7, that is related to construction contracts. This accounting standard 7 prescribes the principles of accounting for construction contracts as the name indicates. Of course, these principles of accounting as well as disclosure in the financial statements of contractors is prescribed by AS7. However, the focus of this standard majorly is on the principles of revenue recognition by the contractors. So the major focus, in addition to the accounting as well as presentation and disclosure, this standard majorly focuses on the revenue recognition by the contractors. So in one way we can say this is also similar to accounting standard 9, revenue recognition, whereas AS9 focuses on revenue recognition by other types of businesses. AS7 focuses only the revenue recognition principles of contractors. Naturally, we are talking about construction contracts. First of all, what is a construction contract? It is a contract specifically negotiated for the construction of an asset, one asset, or even a combination of assets. If they are a combination of assets, then they might be closely interrelated or interdependent in terms of their design, technology and function, or their ultimate purpose or use. So when they will be called as interrelated or interdependent, when there is a combination of assets. If there is only construction of one asset, that is also a construction contract. So the point to be noted here is the contract could be for the construction of one asset or even a combination of assets which are closely related with each other or one another in terms of their design, technology and function, or even sometimes even for their ultimate purpose or usage. For example, if a contractor agrees to construct one house, if he agrees to construct just one house, that is one contract. That is construction of one asset. As an example we are taking. Or let us say a contractor is undertaking or accepting to construct a series of houses like row houses or a series of building complexes. Like we see a lot of times there will be gated communities within which row houses could be there or lot of building blocks would be there. All of them could be constructed by one contractor only, possibly. So whether we talk about construction of one asset or construction of a combination of assets, irrespective of that fact, this construction contract is something that is specifically negotiated for that purpose. We'll come to this point of how to treat a particular contract as a single contract in spite of having multiple assets, or how to treat a contract as separate contracts, under what circumstances we have to deal like that. We will come to that also as part of AS7. But generally the construction contract itself is defined in both the ways. It could be related to construction of one asset or even a combination of assets. That is the definition of construction contract, and AS7 majorly focuses on the revenue recognition principles by the contractors. Now, just for general understanding, broadly we can classify the construction contracts into two categories. One is fixed price contract, second one is cost plus contract. Name itself indicates what is the meaning of that. In case of a fixed price contract, the contractor agrees to a fixed contract price or a fixed rate per unit of output, which in some cases is subject to cost escalation sometimes. So fixed price contract will have, naturally as the name indicates, a fixed price. For example, a contractor has agreed to construct a highway with a contract price of 200 crores. That is a fixed price contract. He is supposed to construct that highway within that price. That is a contract price. But practically sometimes it so happens, by the time the contract is awarded and by the time actually the work is done, there could be some increase in the costs that are going to be incurred in executing this contract. So the contract may have an escalation clause, but there is no necessity or guarantee that every time every contract will have an escalation clause. If there is an escalation clause, then the contract price could be increased by whatever the percentage of escalation that is agreed with into between the contractor and contractee. But once again, there is no rule like that ki there should be cost escalation escalation clause in every contract. Not necessary. If there is a cost escalation contract, for example, of 10%, if it is agreed majorly between the contractor and contractee, then the same fixed price contract, instead of being called as a 200 crores contract, it will be called as a 220 crores contract. But once again, that is only when there is such a clause in the contract. Otherwise, there is no necessity of applying any cost escalation when that is not agreed into between the two parties. Keeping that apart, normally a fixed price contract, as the name indicates, is having a fixed price that is already agreed between the two parties, which will be same irrespective of the costs incurred by the contractor. The contractee will pay the same price to the contractor. So that is what is a fixed price contract, wherein the final contract price is already predetermined and agreed into between the two parties. Then the another type of contract could be cost plus contract. As the name once again indicates, it is something that is cost plus something else. So in this case, the contract is reimbursed for the allowable or otherwise defined costs plus some percentage of these costs or a particular fixed fees over and above these costs. For example, if it is a cost plus contract, so whatever the costs are incurred by the contractor, on that a percentage of profit will be also agreed into between the contractor and contractee, and according to the real actual costs which are incurred and agreed, on that over and above it, some percentage of profit also will be reimbursed, will be given to the contractor by the contractee in case of cost plus contracts. Of course, both these categories of construction contracts have their own positive points and negative points. In case of fixed price contracts, the contractee will never know how much is the profit made by the contractor, whereas in the case of cost plus contract, how much profit is made by the contractor is also already known in advance. So a bit of transparency will be there in case of cost plus contracts. But on the other side, in case of cost plus contracts, the danger is the contractor is not generally motivated to keep the costs low. Why? Because as higher the costs will be, he will get more profit. If he incurs, let us say, 100 crores cost, if the percentage of profit agreed into between them is 10%, he will get a profit of 10 crores. Then the contract price ultimately will be 110 crores. If the contractor incurs 100 crores cost. But in order to earn more profit, maybe he can show more costs, he can have cost overruns, sometimes he can excessively spend without any motivation of keeping the costs under control, because he is not losing anything, the contractor. He will get whatever the cost he has incurred anyway reimbursed from the contractor. On top of that, he will get profit also. So what is the problem for a contractor in this same case? Instead of 100 crores, he might incur 150 crores. Then he will get 15 crores profit. So the contract price will become 165 crores. Unnecessarily, the overall cost of the contract might be exaggerated, it might be overstated, maybe in case of cost plus contracts, if there is no thorough watch and thorough audit on the costs actually incurred by the contractor. So that is one of the other limitations of cost plus contract. Of course, in general, most of the contracts will be fixed price contracts only. Most of the times, cost plus contracts are rare, though they are also in existence under many circumstances. Because of the limitations that it has, they will be generally not intended to be entered into by the parties. So usually the contracts that will be generally entered into will be fixed price contracts. That is usually, not necessarily. Both types of contracts are possible as per the agreement between the contractor and contractee. So in case of fixed price contract, the contract price is fixed, predetermined, of course with a possible cost escalation clause. Whereas in the case of cost plus contract, the contract price is not fixed, but the profit over and above the cost, how much the contractor is going to earn as a percentage or as a fixed fees, that is fixed. But what the contractor gets is reimbursement of the costs that he has incurred plus some percentage of profit or fixed fees over and above that in case of cost plus contracts. These are the two types of contracts which are more popular and more generally entered into between contractor and contractee. Even within them also, fixed price contracts are more popular than cost plus contracts. But of course, we should know the principles related to both. Now, the essence of this entire accounting standard can be summarized into this particular slide. What to do about the revenue and costs? Ultimately, as we already just discussed, this standard is all about revenue recognition. So, how to recognize revenue related to a contract? What is one of the major challenges in revenue recognition of a contract is the contract generally, lot of times the construction contracts will continue to be executed over a period of time. It is not something like a trading business. Okay, you have some purchases, you sold them, you made some profit, not like that. Or even it's not like a manufacturing business that you manufactured something, you sold it, you made profit, not like that. The construction contracts may continue to be executed for a longer period of time. The overall time period could be longer than 1 year. Most of the cases it will be longer than 1 year. So at any point in time, the major challenge here will be what? At the end of the financial year, for the contractor, he will have a lot of contracts which are still being executed, which were not yet completed, which have not resulted in full revenue yet. That is a major challenge. So when the work is not yet completed, we can call that work in progress. When it is still in progress, how to recognize the revenue? Can we recognize 100% revenue because already anyway we have agreed some fixed contract price? No, we cannot. That is where the principles of revenue recognition according to AS 7 have to be applied, where the contract is not yet complete, it is still under execution, then how to recognize the revenue depends upon two factors, two different possibilities. One, if the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably, then the treatment is different. If the final outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably, this is the major criteria, and as I told just now, this is the crux of AS7. This is AS7. So whatever the problems or other things that we are going to encounter will be depending upon this particular principle of revenue recognition, and that revenue recognition depends upon whether the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably or not. Let us say if the final outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably. If it cannot be estimated reliably, then what should happen? First, let us focus on that. Then, the revenue should be recognized only to the extent of contract costs that are incurred, which means revenue in this case is equal to costs. Not 1 rupee of profit should be recognized. If the final outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably, then the revenue should be recognized only to the extent of contract costs which are actually incurred. That too, not the entire contract costs, of which the recovery is probable, which can be recovered. To that extent only, the contract revenue should be recognized. But one point for sure, no profit to be recognized at all. Why? Because the maximum revenue that you can recognize is equal to the cost that is actually incurred, that too the cost of which the recovery is probable. That is when, if the final outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably. We don't need a special discussion or AS7 recommendation for recognizing costs. Why? Because what are costs? Whatever are incurred in executing the contract, those are the costs. They have to be recognized as expense in the period in which they are incurred. That does not require a special instruction or a guideline from AS7. That is common sense. Whenever costs are incurred, those will be anyway recognized. Those will be anyway recognized as expenses, naturally. That is not special. The point is about revenue. Revenue should be recognized only to the extent of the costs that are incurred, which can be probably recovered. So that is one scenario where the final outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably. In that case, you can remember this, the revenue should be equal to costs. That's all. That too, which can be recovered. Next, on the other side, if the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably, then what? If it cannot be estimated, then we are not recognizing any profit at all. We are just recognizing revenue as equivalent to costs. But if the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably, then what should we do? Then the revenue and costs are recognized as per percentage of completion method. That is the main essence of this entire accounting standard 7. So on what basis we have to recognize? Percentage of completion method, considering the stage of completion of the contract at the reporting date. How much percentage of contract is completed? What is the percentage of completion? That has to be calculated, and on that basis of percentage only the revenue has to be determined. So the percentage of completion is very important point here. We are not going to recognize according to the whims and fancies of the management. We have to recognize the revenue in accordance with the actual work that is done, actual percentage of completion that has happened in execution of that contract as on the reporting date. So naturally, how much revenue should be recognized? If at all we want a formula for that, simply speaking, whatever revenue or contract price multiply with percentage of completion, that will be equal to revenue. So contract price, whatever is agreed, fixed contract, multiplied with percentage of completion, that will be equivalent to revenue. In case where the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably. Contract price will be already known, but what should be calculated by us? Naturally, the percentage of completion. We'll see how to calculate percentage of completion. Though the most popular method is used to use the costs incurred to date divided by the total estimated costs. So how to calculate percentage of completion under normal circumstances is cost to date divided by total estimated costs. That can be given, that can be used as a formula for calculating percentage of completion. So once you have that percentage of completion, multiply that with the contract price, that is a revenue that can be recognized. Of course, for costs, anyway whatever costs are actually incurred, those will be anyway recognized. Whereas revenue is very important point, wherein we have to recognize it only by using percentage of completion method according to Accounting Standard 7. That is the only way. But main point is how to calculate the percentage of completion. There are multiple methods. But one of the popular methods that we use in the problems is this. Not that this is the only method. The stage of completion can be calculated by using some other methods also in practical real world. Because we cannot apply all of them for us. The data that will be given also, that can be used also will be this, using which we can find out percentage of completion by taking this formula, cost to date divided by the total estimated cost of the entire contract. That gives percentage of completion. Multiply that with contract price, you get revenue to be recognized. That's it. That is the essence of Accounting Standard 7 as far as revenue recognition is concerned. But there are some other points also to be noted definitely. First of all, the question comes, when can we say that the final outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably? When can we say that it can be estimated? That will be depending upon, once again, the type of contract. In case of a fixed price contract, when can we say that the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably? We can only say that when all the following conditions are satisfied. This can be a theory question. We are not going to really apply any of them because we never know all these things. None of these things can be tested by us in the exam halls and classrooms. In real life, they have to be definitely tested. But if any conditions or situations given in the question are against any of these conditions, then we cannot say that the outcome of the fixed price contract can be estimated reliably. So the point once again is, we can only say that the outcome of the fixed price contract can be estimated reliably when all the following conditions are satisfied. Of course, first point, the total contract revenue can be measured reliably. The receipt of revenue is probable. How do we know that? Normally, just now looking at it, we cannot know that. These are all real life checking conditions. But still, if any such situation is given where we can check those conditions, we have to check. Otherwise, this is mostly important for theoretical purposes. For a normal question that is encountered by us, definitely the total contract revenue can be measured reliably. That is why we have contract price. Receipt of revenue is probable is the basic optimism with which we have to do the problem, without which there is no problem at all. So these are all the things which we assume that they are all satisfied. If there is a fixed price contract and the outcome can be estimated reliably when these conditions are satisfied. So under normal examination questions, unless the situation in the question is warranting otherwise, we assume that all these conditions are satisfied. What are the conditions? Total contract revenue can be measured reliably. The receipt of revenue is probable. The contract costs to complete the contract, that means the total contract cost, how much to be incurred, that is what we are talking about as total estimated cost of the completion of contract can be measured reliably. The stage of completion at the reporting date can be measured reliably. Then the contract costs attributable to the contract can be clearly identified. When all these conditions are satisfied, then we can say the outcome of a fixed price contract can be said to be estimated reliably. What are the conditions? Once again, the total contract revenue should be measurable. reliably, receipt of revenue should be probable, and the total estimated contract costs that will be required to be incurred for completion of the contract should be known reliably. Stage of completion should be measured reliably. The contract costs which are attributable to the contract can be clearly identified. So these contract costs are not messed up with all the other contracts. They should be separately identified. They should be clearly able to be identified with this particular contract. When all these conditions are satisfied, then we can say the fixed price contract outcome can be estimated reliably. Then naturally what method we use? Percentage of completion method. And percentage of completion method means multiplying the contract price with percentage of completion. And how to calculate percentage of completion? Cost to date, which was already estimated reliably, divided by the total estimated cost to complete the contract. That is how fixed price contracts will have to be dealt with. Let us look at a practical example which is given in the ICA material to understand how this application of percentage of completion method is there. Look at the situation here. X Limited commenced a construction contract on 1/4/2013 and the fixed contract price was agreed was 2 lakhs rupees. That was the contract price. The company incurred 81,000 rupees in 2013-14 for 45% work. So what is this 45%? That is percentage of completion, already given in the question. And company received 79,000 as progress payment from the customer. So progress payment is nothing but the payments given by the contractee to the contractor on a phased manner. So that is 79,000 received from the customer means contractee. The cost incurred in 2014-15 was 89,000 rupees to complete the rest of the work. Of course, assuming that customer has paid the entire amount as agreed, how these things will be accounted for in the books of accounts of X Limited is what we should understand. First point, first we have to identify this is a fixed price contract. First point. Second point, we have to observe whether the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably. Answer is yes. Outcome of the contract is possible to be estimated reliably because we know already what is the percentage of completion. So we have to use percentage of completion method in this scenario for recognizing revenue for 2 years. So let us take one by one. First, if you take the P&L account of 1 year, that is 2013-14, because 45% of the work, that is the percentage of completion, how much revenue can be recognized? 45% of contract price. So you can say by contract price, 45% of 2 lakhs will be 90,000 rupees. That is a contract price, that is a revenue that can be recognized. But what are the costs that are incurred in that year? What are the costs that are incurred? We can call them two contract costs. 81,000 costs are incurred in that year. So naturally, when you recognize the revenue of 90,000, incurred a cost of 81,000 only in that year, 2013-14. How much will be the profit that year? That will be 9,000. That is the net profit. Related to this contract in that year. While understanding this, some care has to be taken not to mess up and mix up with contract costing in the costing paper. Contract costing, the purpose of that was different. That was more of from the cost perspective. AS7 is more from the revenue perspective. So don't try to mix up whatever we learned from contract costing here. Here we are only talking about a particular contract of a particular company in a particular year. And essence is what here, how much contract revenue should be recognized. That is the major point. So here 90,000 should be recognized, being 45% of 2 lakhs. You have to show that working. Then contract cost is a fact, 81,000. Then naturally the profit for that year from this contract would be 9,000. So we cannot call it even a P&L account. It is actually a P&L extract. Only one small portion of the entire P&L of X Limited. We don't know X Limited has how many contracts like this. All these things ultimately will go to the overall P&L account of X Limited. So this is related to this particular contract only. That is related to 2013-14. Now, in the same year, 2013-14, the contractee was supposed to pay 90,000, but he paid only 79,000. So, if at all we prepare contractee account, once again related to 2013-14. So how much was the contract price? 90,000 rupees. So to contract price, that is receivable from the contractee, that is 90,000, but by bank, how much is received by bank or cash, whatever, how much is actually received? 79,000 only is received. Which means still there is a 11,000 receivable, which is nothing but by balance carried down. Of course, if we continue this contractee account to 2014-15 also, then the same closing balance of last year becomes the opening balance of next year. So to balance brought down will be 11,000 rupees. That is a contractee account for 1 year, and next year just beginning. Now let us go to next year's P&L account. So P&L account for extract actually 2014-15. P&L account for 2014-15 will be how much? How much was the work done? Naturally the 55% remaining work. 55% of 2 lakhs will be 1,10,000. So by contract price or contract revenue that is recognized will be 1,10,000. 90,000 recognized in 2013-14, remaining 1,10,000 recognized in 2014-15. Then in 2014-15, how much cost was incurred? That was given. That was 89,000 to complete the contract. So rest of the work is done, completed. So to contract costs was 89,000, right? 89,000 was the contract cost. So naturally, what will be the profit in that period to be recognized? To net profit, it will be how much? 21,000. So 1,10,000 contract price, contract cost 89,000, net profit is 21,000. Of course, in the main exam, always you should have totals. Always make sure you are having totals in the accounts. If you don't have this habit of writing the totals, that will be dangerous, not good. Always write the totals. While just practicing, it may not be required, because ultimately we are trying to only understand here. But in exam conditions, the presentation should be completely different. It should be much better, neater and comprehensive. So this was the P&L account of 2013-14 and 14-15. 13-14 had a profit of 9,000 and 14-15 had a profit of 21,000. Total profit of 30,000 was there. And you can just check that also. What was the total cost that is incurred in this contract? 81,000 and 89,000, right? That means total cost incurred is 1,70,000 only total. 2 lakhs is the contract price. That means 30,000 is the total profit made from contract, only for our understanding. But this entire 30,000 is not made in 1 year. That is the point. So in 2013-14, how much of this 30,000 should be recognized? Only 9,000. Then in 2014-15, how much of profit should be recognized? 21,000. Just for checking, total profit should be 30,000, as can be observed from total contract price and total contract cost. But now, going to the contractee account once again, how much the contractee was supposed to pay in 2014-15 for the work that is done? 1,10,000. So once again, to contract price 1,10,000 is supposed to be paid by contractee. It is not mentioned in the question that the contractee has paid the amount. Let us assume he paid the amount, that is the agreement. So by bank, how much amount will be received from contractee in the second year, that is 2014-15? 1,21,000. So 1,21,000 he will pay in the second year. Naturally, the total of money that is received from the contractee also will be equal to the contract price, that is 2 lakhs. So if accounts are asked from the information like this in relation to a fixed price contract, this is how we have to prepare. Most important thing here is revenue recognition. Cost is just recognized according to reality, actuals. Profit will be the resultant figure in each of the years. Contractee is a personal account and it will have balances if the contractee does not pay the entire amount in the same year, and that balance will be carried forward to the next year. So that is the example related to fixed price contract, how to recognize revenue by using percentage of completion method. Now, just now we have observed that in case of fixed price contract, when can we say that the final outcome can be estimated reliably? When all these 5 conditions are satisfied. What about a cost plus contract? When can we say that the final outcome can be estimated reliably? So these are the conditions to be checked there. These are the 2 conditions. Once again, we cannot check them, normally speaking, from just looking at the text of the question always. But if it is given in the question that there is anything that is contrary to this, then we should say the outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably. But normally in a cost plus contract, when can we say that outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably? When it is probable that economic benefits associated with the contract will flow to the enterprise. So there is going to be definitely a cash inflow to the enterprise in relation to the economic benefits associated with the contract when it is probable. So we can say that the receipt of anything is probable, then only we can say that the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably. And not only that, the contract costs which are attributable to the contract, whether or not specifically reimbursable, can be clearly identified and measured reliably. So this is related to the cost measurement. If the cost measurement can be done reliably, and second condition, if there is a possible receipt from the contract, then we can say that outcome of the cost plus contract can be estimated reliably. But once again, these 2 have to be given in the situation. If anything contrary to this is given, we cannot assume that. We have to say the costs or the outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably. So, the practical point of whether the receipt is probable or not is always a questionable thing that can be checked only in the real life. But as far as theoretical understanding is concerned, we need to understand these 2 conditions. So there are 5 conditions in order to identify whether a fixed price contract's outcome can be estimated reliably or not. Whereas in case of cost plus contract, there are only 2 conditions to be checked, whether the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably or not. What are the 2 conditions? First, there should be a probable receipt from the contract. 2, the costs of the contract should be able to be measured reliably. That's it. Let us apply this in another scenario, also given in ICA material as an example. X Limited commenced a construction contract on 1/4/2013. The contract price agreed was reimbursable cost plus 20%. So naturally it is a what type of contract? We can identify that. It is a cost plus contract, cost plus 20%. The company incurred 1 lakh rupees in the year 13-14, that is when the contract began in the beginning of the year, of which 90,000 is reimbursable. So 10,000 is not reimbursable, that means. The further non-reimbursable cost to be incurred to complete the contract are estimated at 5,000, and these are non-reimbursable, clearly given. They are, in order to complete the contract, they are estimated at 5,000 rupees. And other costs to complete the contract could not be estimated reliably. So when we say The other costs which are probably going to be incurred to complete the contract cannot be estimated reliably. We cannot apply percentage of completions and all that. We have to apply the second principle. What is the second principle? The revenue recognized should be equal to costs. That's all. When the outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably, it has to be only one principle. Revenue is recognized only to the extent of costs. That to which costs? The costs which are recoverable or reimbursable. That is what is mentioned here. When we look at this, this is the point we have to apply now. When the outcome of the contract cannot be estimated reliably, then the revenue should be recognized only to the extent of contract cost incurred, of which recovery is probable. Only that. That much cost only should be recognized as if it is the revenue. In this case, what is reimbursable cost of which the recovery is probable? Only 90,000. So naturally, what is the revenue that should be recognized here? Only 90,000. That's all. So, if at all we have to prepare a P&L account in this case, what is the revenue to be recognized? Revenue, by revenue, that is how much? 90,000 only. Only to the extent of costs that are recoverable. So 90,000 only is the revenue. But costs are incurred are how much? Costs incurred. So costs incurred are how much? That is 1 lakh rupees, including non-reimbursable. So 1 lakh rupees is the cost. That is to be that was already incurred actually. And further non-reimbursable cost to be incurred to complete the contract are estimated at 5,000 rupees. So this is a loss that also is going to be definitely incurred. So we need to create a provision for that loss. It is going to be incurred, estimated already, 5,000 rupees. Further costs are going to be incurred for sure. So we can call that as a provision for loss, provision for further expenses, 5,000 rupees. So what is the actual loss? Net loss for the current period, 1,05,000 minus 90,000. 15,000 rupees is the loss that has to be recognized in this year of 2013-14. Why is that? Because the outcome of the contract could not be estimated reliably. Revenue recognition was only equivalent to the reimbursable cost, that is 90,000. But actual costs incurred are 1 lakh. And further costs which are estimated to be incurred also is 5,000. Again, of which recovery is not probable because they are called non-reimbursable costs. For that we have to create a provision now itself. And net loss for the current period will be because of that 15,000 rupees. That is another situation where cost plus contract can be understood. Then, in general, what should the contract revenue consist of? This is a common sense point. Naturally, whatever the initial amount that is agreed in the contract, but sometimes variations in the amount to be received also can be included. That is what we call that as cost escalation or variation sometimes. Sometimes it so happens the client or the contractee will change some of the specifications as the contract is under progress. Then the contractor will have to take a certificate from the contractee for those variation report, and for that there may be some additional cost that is incurred because client has changed the specifications in the middle of the contract. Because of that, some additional cost might be incurred. Those are called variations, and these variations are very important. These are quite common. Normally, even from a small house to the very biggest building like Burj Khalifa in Dubai, wherein I had the pleasure of being the cost controller that time of MR Properties. We have observed so many variations every week. Keeping that high level things apart, even if you look at a small house being constructed also, the owner will first tell, I want this type of tiles. And once the construction is undergoing, then he will tell, no, I want granite tiles. So first he will tell, I want this type of electric switches and switchboards, or I want LED bulbs, he will say. After that he will tell, no, I want some other type of bulbs which I have seen recently, those are very good. Like this, they keep on changing. Changing is okay, that is their wish. It is ultimately owner is who? The client, the contractee. But what is the contractor's job? Contractor has to take approval of the owner in writing practically, otherwise contractor will be in trouble later. Because owner will come and tell verbally something, contractor will execute. After that, owner will tell when I told you. So these all practical issues will be there. But keeping them apart, professional organizations, particularly big level construction companies and contractors, will take the variations very seriously, and they will have a proper authorization for the variations also from the contractee. But variations, whatever they are approved, they will only result in probable revenue. Why? Because once it is approved by the client, that means it is going to be probable that they will result in revenue, and they are capable of being reliably measured. Of course, they have to be measured first. How much is going to be the cost impact of that variation has to be measured also. So simply speaking, the contract revenue can comprise of these two things: original fixed price plus variations agreed if any, or cost escalations agreed if any. That is contract revenue. Contract cost, once again, we don't have to separately look at them in serious manner, because whatever costs that relate directly to the specific contract anyway will include in the contract costs. Also the costs that are attributable to the contract activity in general and that can be allocated to this particular contract should be also included in the contract costs. Imagine if Larsen and Toubro, L&T, is performing hundreds of contracts throughout India. Should there be a basis for allocation of their office and administration expenses to all these contracts or not? There will be, and they will do that. So which are all attributable to the contract activity, which can be allocated to the contract, those costs also will be allocated to the contract according to the policy of the organization. Again, accounting standard is not focusing on the costs part, it is focusing on the revenue part. Cost part is generally the policy of the organization. Of course, there has to be a reasonable basis on the basis of which the allocation should happen. So all those costs which can be directly relatable to the contract or which are not directly related to the contract but still they can be attributable to the contract and they can be allocated to the contract, those costs should be added to contract cost. But contract revenue will consist of the original contract price plus variations or cost escalations if any. That is what is contract revenue and contract cost in a nutshell. But very important point, revenue recognition principle of AS7 already we discussed and we have looked at the examples also. But another important point which we already applied also already to be identified, because these words are to be remembered in a theory question. Such questions will be asked and have been asked in past exams also. At any stage of the contract, when it is probable that the total contract cost will exceed the total contract revenue, it is probable that the total contract cost exceeds the total contract revenue, which means what? The contract probably is going to result in loss. We can call that as estimated or expected loss. That means there is an expected loss. Expected only, we are talking about future. But still, according to AS7, that expected loss should be recognized as an expense immediately. Immediately, the estimated or expected loss from the contract should be recognized. Very, very important principle of Accounting Standard 7. Naturally, applying the principle of conservatism and prudence. All estimated losses should be recognized and provided for. That is a prudence principle or conservatism principle. That principle is applied very clearly and strictly by AS7, which says at any stage of the contract, if it is probable that the total contract cost might exceed the total contract revenue, which means there is an expected loss, such expected loss shall be recognized as an expenditure immediately. And that amount of loss is determined, once again, irrespective of whether or not the work has commenced on the contract, irrespective of the stage of completion, and irrespective of whether the outcome of the contract is estimated or not. So irrespective of any of the things, whenever there is a possible loss, that loss has to be provided for immediately. Actually, here in this case where we have provided for 5,000 rupees, that is also not real cost. That is an estimated cost that could be incurred, which is non-reimbursable. So we provided for it now, though it is not actually incurred. Why is that? That is conservatism. So any time, at any phase, at any stage of the contract, if there is an expected loss, that loss has to be recognized immediately. In other words, that should be provided for. That's a very important aspect of accounting standard 7. And this provision or this recognition should happen irrespective of the stage of completion, irrespective of whether work has started or not, irrespective of whether we can estimate the outcome of the contract reliably or not. Doesn't matter. Irrespective of that, this is always the thumb rule for AS7. Of course, revenue recognition under AS7 will differ. If the estimated outcome can be reliably estimated or not. If the outcome can be estimated reliably, we use percentage of completion method. If the outcome cannot be estimated reliably, we just take costs as equivalent to revenue, or recoverable costs as equivalent to revenue in that case. But the point is, irrespective of any of the methods used, irrespective of whether the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably or not, this principle has to be always applied, which means any estimated loss at any point of time, at any stage in the contract, has to be immediately recognized as an expenditure. That is a very important point of AS7. Let us apply that principle and all the principles that we have observed so far into this example, which is also there in ICA material. Show the profit and loss account extract in the books of a contractor in respect of the following data. Fixed contract price is 6,600,000, let us say. Cost incurred to date is 390 and estimated cost to complete is 260. So we need a profit and loss extract. For that purpose, we need something. Let us say we need a profit and loss extract like this, and we need to first of all know what is the revenue that is to be recognized, which we don't know. But what can be definitely recognized? Cost incurred to date, that is okay. 390 can be definitely there on the debit side of that P&L, no problem in that. Two contract costs, 390 is okay. But the point is revenue, how much? That has to be calculated. That has to be calculated on the basis of percentage of completion. Percentage of completion has to be calculated on the basis of cost incurred to date divided by total estimated cost. What is cost incurred to date? 390 divided by total estimated total 390 plus 260. Total estimated cost means already what is incurred plus what is going to be incurred in future. So that will be how much? 650 into 100. So what is the percentage of completion here we can calculate? 390 divided by 650 into 100 means 60% is the percentage of completion. So when there is percentage of completion 60% and contract price is 600, what is going to be the revenue recognizable? 60% of 600. That means by revenue, contract revenue recognized is 360. 60% of 600 is 360. That is first point. Revenue recognition principle, because the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably. How do we know that? Because estimated cost to complete is already given. So percentage of completion method we have used and recognized the revenue. But the story is not over. We have to also check whether the total outcome of the contract is going to result in any estimated loss. In this case, it looks like yes. Why? Because the total cost estimated to complete this contract is 650, whereas the total contract revenue is going to be only 600, which means total estimated loss is how much? 50. Estimated loss is 50, total estimated loss. But if you observe, already there is a loss of 30 in the same period. So how much further loss we have to provide for? Provision for loss will be how much? How much further? 30 is already there. How do we know 30? 390 minus 360, 30 is already there. In addition to that, further 20 has to be provided for. In other words, by net loss for the current period also will be 50, which is recognized as a loss immediately in the same year. So the total of both the sides of this P&L extract naturally will have to be 410. So the total loss is 50. Out of that, 30 is already incurred. So further, how much provision we have to provide for future losses? That is 20. That is why The current period loss, which has been recognized immediately, is equivalent to the total loss, that is 50. That is how the P&L extract can be prepared. Of course, we need to show these working notes in the examination if such questions are given. Presentation matters a lot in accounting standard questions. You need to write the formulae, substitute, write the answers. Profit and loss extract also clearly have to show each item separately. Then conclusion and some provisions whatever you applied here. Why you took 360 only? Because you applied percentage of completion method. If you keep that in your mind, how the valuer will know that? You have to write that. So the percentage of completion according to the above computations is 60%, and according to accounting standard 7, since the outcome of the contract can be estimated reliably in case of a fixed price contract, we have to take percentage of completion method, which means 600 multiplied with 60%, that is equal to 360. All these things have to be written with some text and with some numbers. Then same way, one more point has to be written very clearly. Theory has to be written in accounting standard questions. It is not just about numbers only. Whatever the text or the standard or the provision of the standard we are applying, that has to be very clearly indicated. What other provision we have applied at any stage of the contract, if it is estimated that the total contract cost might exceed the total contract revenue, then the estimated loss shall be recognized immediately according to AS7. Hence, the 50 lakhs, which is, or 50,000, which is estimated loss, has to be treated as the total loss of current year itself. But since already 30,000 is there as current year loss, further provision for this has to be created for 20,000, like this. So that is another situation of applying the principles of accounting standard 7. But as we discussed earlier, for general understanding, the percentage of completion or stage of completion can be determined by using different methods. What we use is this, because that is the only thing that we can use. Can we go and do the survey and all? We cannot do. But in reality, they can do that. Physical proportion of the contract work, can we do that? We cannot do. Because engineers will do that, called as quantity surveyors. They will do these things. So we don't have to worry about them. Only just to know if other methods of technical evaluation are possible, they are also possible to be used in reality. As far as our exam questions and problems are concerned, we are only to take the proportion that the contract cost incurred for work performed up to the reporting date, that is what we called as what? Cost to date simply, divided by estimated total contract cost, that is what we called as total estimated cost. That is a percentage of completion method or stage of completion that we can calculate with the data that is available, which we already did also. But only we should also know that in reality, this is not the only method. There are other methods of actual physical proportion of work evaluated also. Real surveys of the work performed also can be done, but both these things can be done only by civil engineers really looking at the stage of completion physically, which we cannot do. So we stick to the first method only for our examination problem purposes. At the same time, we should also know that practically there are other methods also to compute the stage of completion. Now moving on to another discussion, which we started with the definition of construction contract itself, where we said construction contract could be negotiated for one particular contract or multiple contracts or multiple works. So construction of one asset or a combination of assets. So the point comes, when should we take it as one asset? When should we take it as combination of assets? So these are the very important points also. Examination questions were asked here, but this is theoretical. This is not any computational. Theoretical questions were asked and we have to answer them accordingly using the same words which are given in the standard. Let us look at first case. What is this first case? When a contract covers a number of assets, each contract should be treated as a separate contract. So when a contract is having number of assets, but each contract is treated as a separate contract. Imagination, for example, let us say there is a gated community in which there are so many houses that are going to be constructed as row houses like this, for example. if the contractor is having an agreement with each of the owners of these houses separately, though he has undertaken to construct all the houses also, still it will be considered as if it is a separate contract. So in this particular case, there will be 9 separate contracts. If this gated community has 9 separate houses for which the contract has been signed separately with each of these owners. If this is the case, then only. So what has to be the conditions to be met when we have to treat each contract as a separate contract? First condition is separate proposals have been submitted for each asset. So each of them is considered to be a separate asset and separate proposals have been submitted to them. If that is the case, then only they are considered as 9 different contracts but not as one contract. First condition is what? Separate proposals have been submitted. Second, each asset has been subject to separate negotiation and contractor and customers are able to accept or reject that part of the contract relating to each asset. So each asset was subject to separate negotiation. So in this case, the contractor has entered into the negotiations with whom? Is it with the overall master developer of this gated community or individual owners of these houses? He has entered into individual owners of these houses. For example, somebody here, this owner of the house says, no, I don't want this contractor. I will appoint another contractor because this contractor is putting some other specifications. I want some more luxurious imported specifications. He might say, I don't want to enter into this contract. Or somebody may say, I don't want to enter into this contract now. So point is what? The customers are able to accept or reject that part of the contract relating to each asset. They have that facility if that is the case. Imagine if the master developer himself is entering into a contract with this contractor, then individual customers will not have that facility of rejecting this contractor. They have to accept whatever the master developer has accepted, has appointed as a contractor for the entire community. So, the same situation of gated community can be there where each of the assets can be treated as a separate contract also. All the assets put together is treated as one contract also. Example is same. Situation is different. When we are treating it as a separate asset, if separate proposals have been submitted for each asset, second, each asset has been subjected to separate negotiation and the customers are able to accept or reject that part of the contract relating to each asset. If these customers do not have a choice but to accept this contractor, then we cannot call them as separate contracts, it is all one contract. But if, as we are looking at this discussion, some 3 people said no, we don't want this contractor, then that means they have a choice to reject. That means this is only remaining with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 separate contracts only. They are all separate contracts. Still we cannot call it as one contract, though they are all constructed within the same compound. That does not make it a one contract if these conditions are satisfied. 1, when separate proposals are submitted. 2, each asset has been subjected to separate negotiation. And 3 is generally possible. Costs and revenues of each asset can be identified. Usually, yes. Usually, it so happens that the common facilities like roads, water facility, drainage, electricity, street lights, parks, etc. will be developed by master developer. And the contractor we are talking about, he will construct the house and give it to the customers. Of course, with interior and other things as per their specifications and agreement. But can he identify the costs and revenues for each asset? Generally, yes. That should not be an issue. Generally. So, if that is possible, then the contracts here are not one contract. In our example, because all these 3 people have cancelled in our story, these are 6 different contracts, but not one contract. Imagine the same example, these conditions are not satisfied, then it will become only one contract. Though he is making 9 different houses, it will become only one contract. 9 houses, 9,000 houses. You can see the blocks of apartments constructed by different people, different developers. So those huge buildings and all developed by one contractor. Then can we say that each apartment in that, each flat in that is a contract? No. There is no separate negotiation there. There is no separate negotiation for each flat. That is why those cannot be called as separate contracts, so those will be called as one contract. We'll come to that. But in this particular example, when can we treat each of these contracts, even though it covers more than one asset at the same time? When can we call it as a separate contract? Is when separate proposals have been submitted, when each asset was subject to separate negotiation. These are the words you have to write. And customers are capable of accepting or rejecting that part of the contract relating to each asset, and costs and revenues for each asset can be identified. If these conditions are satisfied, then we can say, though there are multiple assets, all of them are treated as separate contracts. In our example, 6 different contracts will be there, not one contract in this particular example. So that is one scenario which can be observed in one of the case studies that was given in the exam questions. Another scenario is there which is opposite of this, naturally, where group of contracts are there, all of them are with single customer, or even with several customers also should be treated as one single construction contract. So same logic, same thing, same gated community. If these conditions are not satisfied, automatically it becomes one contract but not separate contracts. Then what? What should be the conditions? Opposite conditions, naturally. One, the group of contracts is negotiated as a single package, not separately for each of these 9 houses. All of them are negotiated at a single package, that's all. No separate negotiation for each contract, each house. So the group of these contracts is negotiated as a single package is one condition. Second, the contracts are performed either concurrently or on a continuous sequence. Both are okay. That can be performed concurrently also or in continuous sequence also. In this case, gated community example, individual houses, they can be performed concurrently. Can the contractor build all the 9 houses at the same time? Very much yes. There is no problem in that. But can a contractor build all the 40 floors of an apartment concurrently, simultaneously? No, not possible. So he has to do one after the other. There is no option. So it could be both, concurrently also or in a continuous sequence also. So in this case, let us say 30-floored building is there. Is it 30 contracts? No, it is not. It is only one contract. In this, there may be so many flats. So let us say each of them has 3 flats each floor. So is it 90 contracts? No, it is not. It is only one contract, because though there are multiple assets, different customers also, all the group of contracts put together will be called as one single construction contract if this entire contract is negotiated as a single package. Second, the contracts are performed concurrently or in a continuous sequence. Then another important condition here is the contracts are so closely interrelated that they are in effect part of a single project with an overall profit margin. So they are all ultimately part of a single project, and the contractor is not going to get how much profit from this flat, how much profit from this flat, how much profit from this flat. He cannot get. How much is the profit of this entire project, he can understand. And actually not only this one apartment, a lot of times it so happens that so many buildings are there constructed, so many of them are constructed, and all of them can be considered as one contract also, if all of them are negotiated as a single package, if all of them are being performed either concurrently or continuously. Concurrently, this building and this building can be starting. These 2 may not be started, other 3. But within those, 4th floor cannot be constructed without 1st floor, not possible. So they have to be constructed in continuous sequence. After that, other buildings may be started. So the point is, main point here is not concurrently or continuously, both are possible, but still, when group of contracts is negotiated as a single package, then it is a single contract, but not 5 contracts in our example earlier. Whereas, if the contracts are so interrelated that in effect they are part of a single project. So this is all once again within a gated community, within some kind of project. So we see a lot of types of projects and different names throughout the country. Lot of variety names will be given to those projects by our developers, whatever the names may be, but that is all one project. So that is all one contract for the contractor. Care has to be also taken, because lot of times because of naturally non-understanding of real situations, people will confuse between developers and contractors. Developers are different, contractors are different. That is different parties altogether. For example, if there is a developer, say like MR Properties in Dubai, or in India, we can take somebody like DLF or Tata Projects. Tata Projects, let us say, Tata Housing, let us say, that is a developer. Contractors are different. Of course, sometimes there may be contracting business of these developers also, which do contracts for themselves. That's a different story. But the parties are different. When there is a huge construction project, we have to understand the parties are different. So who are the parties? Developer is the owner, contractor is the one who is going to actually construct the work, who got the contract of developing or constructing from the developer or owner, and there will be consultants who are technical consultants who will advise this entire project. So these three parties are very important for major construction contracts. Of course, when we are talking about a professional level, high level construction activity. So the point of Accounting Standard 7 is mostly related to the contractor, not the developer or the owner. Owner could be different. Owner can also use Accounting Standard 7 to the extent it is applicable to them. Because ultimately, for them, the revenue that they are going to generate, the developer, is not from construction, is generating by selling the apartments or buildings what they are making. So that revenue is different. Construction contract means the contractor is making revenue by construction. For example, the biggest contractor as far as India is concerned is Larsen and Toubro, biggest one. Of course, there are many of the others, but popular and most famous engineers and contractors in India will be Larsen and Toubro company. They are contractors. What do? They take work from the developers. They actually do the construction work, really. And that will be on the basis of a fixed price contract, most of the cases, with some escalation clauses or variations. And recognition of revenue for Larsen and Toubro exactly should happen according to AS7 only. That will happen according to AS7. Being a professional company and listed company, they will follow all these accounting standards. Again, let us not get into the discussion of is it going to be AS or Ind AS and all. Definitely accounting standards, whatever they are, they have to follow. But this distinction of contractor and developer is also important. Consultant is only a service provider. Developer is also actually not much interested in the final asset. He is not interested in the work in progress much because it is not his work. For him, revenue is what he gets from the customers by selling the apartments. Cost is what he pays to the contractor, that's all. He is not incurring any cost on the work that is being done. He is not doing the work. He is only the owner. So, for example, if you take a small construction of a own house, let us say, for example purposes, the owner who wanted to construct the house is developer. And the one who is actually constructing the house is the contractor. So this AS7 is applicable to the contractor who is incurring the costs for the execution of the work. Developer just keeps on giving progress payments to the contractor, that's all. But once again, in the big real estate projects, this distinction has to be remembered. But under normal conditions, whoever is incurring the cost for the construction naturally will be covered by Accounting Standard 7. And here, in these two examples, we can clearly see, in the first case, though there are many assets, each of them are considered as separate contracts only. In the second case, though there are many assets, they are considered as one contract only, single construction contract only, according to the conditions which are specified in the standard. So these are the very important points, 2 points theoretically speaking. Similar question can be expected like this also. As a case, Mr. Sham, a construction contractor, undertakes the construction of an industrial complex. He has a separate proposals raised for each unit. So name itself indicates when he has a separate proposal raised for each unit to be constructed in the industrial complex, that means each of them has to be considered as a separate contract. But let us look at facts of the case further. Since each unit is subject to separate negotiation, he is able to identify the costs and revenue attributable to each unit also. Should Mr. Sham treat construction of each unit as a separate construction contract? According to S7, answer is yes. He has to treat each unit as a separate construction contract because this is falling under this category. Because separate proposals have been submitted, each asset has been subject to separate negotiation, and costs and revenues of each of the assets can be identified. In that case, each of the assets will be considered as if it is a separate contract. That is the answer. With the explanation, theoretical question, there is nothing to compute here. We have to write the conditions when a contract can be treated as a separate contract when it covers a number of assets. These are the three conditions you should write. Simple. Then you have to conclude. In this current scenario, Mr. Sham, since he had separate proposals for each unit and also he can estimate the costs and revenues attributable to each unit separately, all the conditions are satisfied which are prescribed in AS7. Hence, each unit of this industrial complex should be treated as if it is a separate contract. After knowing all the points related to the computation, recognition of revenue, and recognition of estimated losses, if any, immediately, and treating the contracts as separate contracts or one contract, different points were mentioned in Accounting Standard 7. And just like any other standard, AS7 also will have certain disclosures which are required in the financial statements. What are the disclosures required? Once again, this can be a theoretical question, or even a problem can be asked on this with some bit of calculations involved. Very important, disclosures part. What are the things to be disclosed? Of course, the amount of contract revenue recognized as revenue should be disclosed. What methods were used to determine the percentage of completion or stage of completion has to be disclosed. And particularly the contracts which are in progress, the amount of advances received should be disclosed, and amount of retentions. Retentions means the money that is payable by the contractee, but the contractee has retained for the time being, and he will release it later once he is 100% satisfied with the quality of the work of the contractor. Those are called retentions. If any retentions are there from the contractee, those amounts also have to be disclosed. Common things, but definitely they have to be disclosed in the financial statements of the companies which are involved in construction contracts. Contract revenue, method used to determine the stage of completion, advances received from the customers, the amount of retentions, if any, have to be also disclosed. In addition to that, two other important aspects are to be disclosed also. One is due from customers and other one is due to customers. One of them will be there, both will not be there. If there is a due from customers, that will be shown as an asset. If it is due to customers, it will be shown as a liability. So they should also clearly present these things in the financial statements. What is due from customers and what is due to customers. Then how to calculate this? In questions also this can be asked, so you should remember this formula. How to calculate this amount due from customers or due to customers. So this has to be taken specifically. So this is one calculation and this is another calculation. Both have to be separately done and one has to be deducted from the other. What is the first calculation? Contract costs plus recognized profits minus recognized losses. Any one of them will be there. Minus of progress payments received plus progress payments to be received. So first part is contract cost plus recognized profit minus recognized losses. That is first part. From that, progress payment received plus progress payments to be received has to be deducted. So if it is the positive amount, that is due from customers. If it is negative amount, that is due to customers. That's all. So whatever the costs plus the recognized profit minus losses, if it is more than the progress payment received plus progress payments to be received, that means costs are more than the amounts to be received from the customers, that means that is supposed to be received yet from the customers. If not, it is due to the customers. So that has to be calculated by using this formula. Progress payments received plus progress payments to be received will be on one part, and contract cost plus recognized profit minus recognized losses is on the another part. If it is due from customers, it is shown as an asset. If it is due to customers, it is shown as a liability naturally. So let us look at how these have to be disclosed, various items within the financial statements with an example. A firm of contractors obtained a contract for construction of bridges across river Revati, whatever it is. The following details are available in the records kept for the year ended 31st March 2017. Okay. Point is about numbers that we have here. Total contract price is 1000 lakhs. Work certified is 100 and work uncertified is 105. Then estimated further cost to completion is 495. That is possible to be estimated already. Progress payment received is 400. Progress payment to be received is 140. The firm seeks your advice and assistance in the presentation of accounts. Presentation means disclosures also, keeping in view of the requirements of AS7 issued by ICI. So this is a very important question because it covers almost the entire standard in one nutshell. It shows the disclosures, what are the things to be disclosed. We should disclose contract revenue, percentage of completion, if at all any advances received, if at all there are any retentions, and then any amount is due from customers or due to customers, everything has to be disclosed. For disclosing them, we should do the calculations. First of all, let us look at one of them, each of them one by one. This is the answer, by the way, how to get the calculations of each of them. Contract revenue, how to get it. Contract revenue is how we can calculate it as a percentage of completion method. What is the total cost to date? Whether it is work certified or work uncertified, cost is cost. What is total cost to date? That is 605, right? Divided by total estimated cost. Cost to date is 605 plus further estimated cost is 495. So 605 plus 495, 1100 is the total estimated cost. That is the total of these two. 495 plus 605, that is 1100. So how much is the percentage completion? 605 divided by 1100 into 100 means 55% is completed. That is one very important calculation. From the cost to date divided by total estimated cost formula. 55% of what? 55% of total contract price has to be recognized as revenue. So 55% of 1000 is how much? That is what is 550. This is how it has to be presented. Contract revenue is 550. What is contract costs? Already we know that 500 plus 105, that is 605. Then according to accounting standard 7, if there is any estimated loss that might result from this contract, that should be recognized immediately. How much could be that estimated loss? Because the total estimated cost in this case already as we calculated is 1100, but contract price is only 1000. That means there is an estimated expected loss of 100. That is recognized loss. 100 lakhs loss, that is. That has to be recognized immediately because the total estimated cost is going to be more than total estimated revenue. At any point of time this happens, according to S7, it has to be recognized immediately. And how much is that? 100. That has to be shown. Then progress billings. Progress billings means whatever we have billed the customer. Out of that, some money received, some money not received, but we billed that. So how much is that? 400 plus 140, that is 540. Then retentions means which are yet to be received, 140, that is also given. How much is yet to be received? 140 to be received from the customer or contractee. Each of the items have to be disclosed. For them we have to calculate. So this 550 has to be calculated, 605 is in the question, 100 has to be calculated, 540 is given in the question, 140 is also given in the question. Now the amount due to or due from the customers, so that has to be also calculated. 35 is there. On what basis we have to calculate that? By using this formula. Contract costs plus recognized profits minus recognized losses minus of progress payments received plus progress payments to be received. So look at the contract costs. Contract costs are how much? Already we know 605, both certified and uncertified. Recognized profits less recognized losses. Profits are not there, losses are there. So minus losses. This is one part. Minus of the amount received from customer and to be received from the customer also. Progress payment received plus progress payment to be received. And we know that already. That is 540. So 605 minus 100 will be 505 minus 540 is minus 35. Minus 35 means what? You don't need to worry about minus here. What does it mean that we have to identify? Minus 35 means what? Amount due to customer cities. If the amount is positive, this one, it was due from customers. If this amount is negative, it is due to customers. Because the cost minus loss is going to be less than the amount that is due to be received. So point is, we are going to receive less and our cost is going to be more. In other words, due to customers, not in the form of money directly we are going to give. That is a cost that we are anyway supposed to incur in future towards customers. So that is a liability. So once again, when we have calculated here in this formula, when this is positive, it is due from customers. If it is negative, it is due to customers. So in this case, what has emerged? It has become negative. 505 minus 540 minus 35. That is why the answer has to be written as amount due to customers. And that will be shown as a liability in the balance sheet. How much is that? 35. You should not write minus and all. You should know that already, that once it is minus, it is due to customers. That's it. These are the various things that have to be disclosed. All the points in AS7 are covered here. Revenue recognition is covered, percentage of completion is covered, and recognition of all the expected losses is covered. Computation of gross amount due to or due from customers is also covered here. So all the points are covered in this question. Such type of questions can very well be expected in the examinations. Very important model. Then other questions, let us continue to do with some of the examples. Some of them are in ICA material and some of them are past exam questions. On 1st December 2016, Vishwakarma Constructions Company Limited undertook a contract to construct a building for 85 lakhs. That is a contract price. On 31st March 2017, the company found that it has already spent 64 lakhs 99,000 on the construction. That is the cost to date. Prudent estimate of additional cost of completion was 32 lakhs 1,000. What amount should be charged to revenue in the final accounts for the year ended 31st March 2017 as per the provisions of AS7? So simple question. Once again, percentage of completion you have to calculate. Cost to date 64 lakhs 99,000 divided by total estimated cost to complete. How to get that? Once again, cost to date plus further costs that are expected to be incurred to complete the contract. That will give us total estimated cost in the denominator. So what is the denominator? First find it out. 64 lakhs 99,000 plus 32 lakhs 1,000. How much it might cost in total for the completion of this contract? 97 lakhs. But how much is completed so far? 64 lakhs 99,000 into 100. 64 lakh 99,000 divided by 97 lakhs is how much? Percentage of completion is how much now? 67%. Which means 67% of 85 lakhs can be recognized as revenue. That's it. So 67% of 85 lakhs is how much? 56 lakhs 95,000 can be recognized as revenue. That's the question actually. But for understanding purposes, if you take a extract of P&L, how much will be recognized as revenue? Simply speaking, 56 all rupees in lakhs, 56.95. Actual cost that is incurred so far is 64.99, right? But there is a total estimated loss if you observe it, because total estimated cost is 97 lakhs, but the original contract is only 85 lakhs. So 97 minus 85, that will be 12 lakhs. So 12 lakhs is the total loss which has to be recognized immediately. But with that, how much is the provision that we are supposed to make now? That is 3.96 lakhs. Why is that? Out of this 12 lakhs, already 8.04 lakhs is incurred. How do we know that? That is the difference between these two. Because 64.99 lakhs cost incurred, 56.95 only revenue incurred, 8.04 is already incurred loss. What is the further loss that we have to provide for? 3.96. So that the total loss recognized in the current year itself will be 12 lakhs. So this is the total loss. Ultimately, the question here is only asking about revenue. Answer is 56 lakhs 95,000. So that is the essence of Accounting Standard 7 applied in multiple cases. Same way, some questions were asked in past exams also. Versus Highway Constructions undertook a construction of highway on 1/4/2013. The contract was supposed to be completed in 2 years. Contract price was 150 crores. Up to 31st March 2014, the company incurred 120 crores. Engineers involved in the project estimated that further 45 crores would be incurred to complete the work. What amount should be charged to revenue for the year 13-14 as per provisions of Accounting Standard 7? Also show the extract of profit and loss account in the books of highway construction. Same question as we have done just now, nothing different, only numbers are different. What is the cost to date? Cost to date is 120 crores divided by what is going to be the total estimated cost? 120 plus 45, 165 into 100. So what is going to be the percentage of completion? 72.73% approximately. 120 divided by 165 into 100, 72.73% approximately is the percentage of completion. So how much revenue should be recognized? 72.73% of 150 crores. So 150 into 72.73%. So once again, approximately 109 crores revenue has to be recognized. Cost incurred is already how much? 120. But once again, is there an estimated loss that we have to find out? Looks like, because the total cost is 165, contract price is only 150, which means there is an estimated loss of 15 crores, which should be recognized immediately. For that purpose, how much further provision should be made now? Because already there is 11 crores loss from the existing cost. So 4 crores of provision should be created on the debit side. So total of this P&L will be 124 and 124. That's it. That is a profit and loss extract of Highway Constructions Limited. But you have to write once again, as I said, lot of theory. Percentage of completion, how you are calculating. Revenue recognition should happen only on the basis of percentage of completion. And also you have to write the provision saying that according to AS7, at any point of time, at any stage of the contract, if the total cost of the contract is estimated to be higher than the total revenue or contract price, then the loss has to be recognized immediately. Since already there is 11 crores loss, additional 4 crores loss also has to be provided for immediately. That is why this 4 crores is there on the debit side. 15 crores is considered as the net loss of this year only, though it is not the loss really related to this year, but still it is considered to be the loss of this year only immediately. That's it. Now, let us move on to another question which was given in May 2015 in the exam. Important type of question, can be expected also. Similar with different numbers and different little bit of more and less points. A construction contractor has a fixed price contract for 9,000 lakhs to build a bridge in 3 years time frame. Summary of some of the financial data is given as follows. Year 1, 2, 3 are given. Initial amount agreed in the contract is 9,000 originally, of course, but there is a variation in revenue. In year 1 there is no variation, year 2 and year 3 there was a variation of 200, both are same. And by the way, this is cumulative, not only related to year 2. So whatever variation in year 2 is there, that is there in year 3 also, naturally. So the contract price, when we look at year 1 is 9,000, the contract price, total contract price will be 9,200 when we look at year 2 and year 3. Contract cost is given, which is reality, that is 2093, 6168 and 8,100, but there are some points here mentioned with a star. What is that? This 6168 includes 100 lakhs for standard materials stored at the site to be used in year 3. So can we consider 6168 as the cost of year 2 or cost till year 2? Up to. We cannot consider. Why? Because 100 lakhs worth of material is still there, it is not consumed. So that has to be reduced from 6168. So actually how much will be the cost till year 2? It will be 6068. On the other side, that will be added to year 3 because that year 3 to 8100 excludes the same 100 lakhs for standard material brought forward from year 2. So the point is, when it is used, that should be considered in that year. If it is not used just in stock, that cannot be considered as a cost. So it is excluded from year 2's cumulative cost and included in year 3 cumulative cost. So this is the revised numbers from 6168 and 8100. They become 6068 and 8200. 100 reduced from 1 year, 100 added to the next year. That's all. Then estimated profit for the whole contract is given. Estimated profit is given here. It has not given the costs only. It has given the profit. Total estimated cost can be found out from this because we have the total revenue and total estimated cost. That means total estimated profit is there. That means total estimated cost can be found out by deducting the estimated profit from total revenue that is agreed upon. Now the variation in cost and revenue in year 2 has been approved by the customer, of course, then only we should take it, otherwise no. What we have to compute is compute year-wise amount of revenue, expenses and contract costs to complete and profit or loss to be recognized in the statement of profit and loss as per AS7. A perfect question that can be asked in the exams also. So how to get the revenue recognition? Always revenue recognition requires percentage of completion. For percentage of completion, we need what? We need two things. One is cost to date, second one is estimated total cost to complete. First thing we have, that is already given. Cost to date is given. Fine. But what is going to be the estimated total cost? That is not given directly. That we can find out indirectly. How? By reducing the estimated profit from the total estimated revenue. Naturally, what is the difference between revenue and profit? That is the total estimated cost. So that can be found out for each of the years separately. So let us find that out as a working first. For years 1, 2 and 3. So what is the total estimated cost in year 1? 9,000 minus 950. That will be 8050, that is in denominator. At the end of year 2, total estimated cost will be 9,200 minus 1,000. 200 also should be added to the revenue, right? 9,200 minus estimated profit 1,000, that is 8,200. And it is going to remain the same in year 3 also, because total estimated revenue also, total estimated cost also, both the profit also, both are same. So total estimated cost also will be same. But how much is the cost that is incurred up to that day, up to the end of year 1, year 2 and year 3? First year 2093, no adjustment there, so no problem, we can directly take 2093. Second year 6068, third year 8200. So 6068, 8200. So naturally here 100% of the work is completed by the end of third year, not in the third year, by the end of third year. By the end of second year, 74% of the work is completed, and by the end of first year, 2093 divided by 8050, 26% of the work is completed. So this is the percentage in which we have to recognize costs and revenues and profits naturally. So let us just take these percentages on each of them. First, revenue recognition. Revenue recognition in year 1. Revenue will be how much? 26% of 9,000. That will be 2340. 26% of 9,000. That will be 2340. Then costs already incurred, we know that 2093. Then naturally profit or loss will be how much? To be recognized in year 1, 247 lakhs or crores, whatever it is, lakhs. That is for year 1. Then year 2, calculate this carefully. Year 2, 74% has to be recognized. 74% of what? 9200. That means 6808. 6808 is supposed to be recognized, but already 2340 was recognized. So how much should be freshly recognized now? Only the remaining revenue, that is 4468. So 74% of 9200, now the new contract price is 6808. Because 2340 is already recognized in year 1, freshly in year 2 how much should be recognized? 4468. That is the new revenue to be recognized. Then new cost to be recognized depends upon cumulative cost. 6068 to be recognized minus 2093 already recognized. So 3975 is the new cost that is supposed to be recognized, which means profit for year 2 will be 493. Same way for year 3, 8200 is the total, 9200 is the total revenue to be recognized, 100%, minus how much is already recognized? 2340 in year 1 and 4468 in year 2. So 2392 is the revenue to be recognized only in the third year. And cost also you can calculate accordingly. Out of 8200 total cost, already 2093 and 3975 are already recognized. That means 2132 is the fresh cost to be recognized, which means what is the fresh profit to be recognized only in year 3? 260. And if you total this total profit, naturally that should be equal to 1000 lakhs, which is the real profit also by the end of year 3, because contract price was 9200, actual cost was 8200, and naturally profit was 1000 lakhs. So the point is, cumulatively how much revenue, cost and profit are there, and separately for each year how much revenue, cost and profit are there has to be separately calculated. Very good question, important type of question. That's what is asked. Year wise amount of revenue, expenses, contract cost to complete, and profit or loss to be recognized in the statement of profit and loss. So how much profit or loss to be recognized in each year? Year 1 247, year 2 493, year 3 260. Like this, 3 different years, different amounts of profits will be recognized according to what? The percentage of completion. That is important. So once again, when you say percentage of completion, that is till the end of that year, not related to that year only. So whatever the percentage of completion we applied on the revenues and costs, whatever is already recognized as revenue or cost, that has to be reduced. Remaining amount has to be recognized now in the current year. Same logic applies to second and third years calculations. First year has no problem because anyway it is the first fresh year. That is about this question given in May 2015, a good important type of model that can be expected in the examinations once again. Now let's look at one more question. An amount of 9,90,000 was incurred on a construction work up to 31st March 2010, and certificates have been received to date to the value of 12 lakhs, against which 10,80,000 has been received in cash. The cost of the work done but not certified amounts to 22,500. It is estimated that by spending an additional amount of 60,000 rupees, including provisions for contingencies, the work can be completed in all respects in another 2 months. The agreed contract price for the work is 12,50,000. And compute the conservative estimate of the profit to be taken to the profit and loss account as per accounting standard 7. See, the point is here 9,90,000 is the cost to date, right? That is the cost of the work that is incurred already to date. How much work certified, how much money received, that doesn't matter as far as AS7 is concerned. AS7 is not at all bothered about that. But the cost of the work done but not certified amounted to 22,500. So this is also assumed to be included in this 9,90,000. Let us keep it like that. Further cost that is going to be incurred in the next 2 months will be how much? Additional amount of 60,000. That is estimated cost. So 9,90,000 plus 60,000. Total estimated cost is going to be how much? 10,50,000. So in this 10,50,000, how much work is already done? 9,90,000 done. So 9,90,000 divided by 10,50,000 into 100, around 94.29% is there. If you apply that on the contract price of 12,50,000, so how much revenue to be recognized in this particular contract is 11,78,571 approximately. Let us say 570. So 11,78,570 is the revenue that is supposed to be recognized. So in this, already the costs incurred are how much? Costs incurred are 9,90,000. Right? That means how much profit can be recognized here? 11,78,570 minus 9,90,000 means 188,570 can be recognized as profit for the current year. There is no estimated loss. Always there will not be estimated loss. Total cost that is expected is only 1050. Contract price is 1250. That means totally there is going to be an estimated profit of 2 lakhs. But out of that, how much is going to be recognized now is only 1,88,570. So how much of the work is done but not certified? We don't really need to account for it separately. And how much is the money that is actually received? Of course, that will be accounted for all of them. But the point is, accounting standard 7 has nothing to do with those items. As far as the work certified and uncertified are concerned, those are mostly related to costing. In accounting standard 7, what our focus will be is on percentage of completion. Percentage of completion, if we take cost as the basis, this is the best method. Only we use it in AS7. One is cost to date divided by the total estimated cost. So 9,90,000 divided by 10,50,000, whatever that percentage is, that percent of 12,50,000 only can be recognized as revenue. Remaining can be calculated and recognized as profit. So this is application of accounting standard 7 with unnecessary information which has to be ignored. So here certificates received for 12 lakhs useless, against which 10,80,000 is received useless. Work done but not certified useless. For us it is not required because it is a cost that is incurred for us. These are all the things which might be useful in costing but not in accounting standard 7. That is why you have to be careful not to mess up with costing questions and accounting standard 7 questions. Accounting standard 7 is very clear and straightforward. Only whatever points are mentioned in AS7, those only we have to follow. We should not look at unnecessary information at all. That's it. That was another question given long back earlier. Now let us move on to the last question. That is, Uday Constructions undertakes to construct a bridge for the government of Uttar Pradesh. The construction commenced during the financial year ending 31st March 2018 and is likely to be completed by the next financial year. Okay, no problem. The contract is for a fixed price of 12 crores. So this is the contract price with an escalation clause. Okay, let it be. You are given the following information for the year ended 31st March 2018. Cost incurred up to date is 4 crores. Cost estimated to complete the contract is 6 crores. And escalation cost by 5% and accordingly the contract price also increased by 5%. You are required to ascertain the state of completion, that is first question, and compute the amount of revenue and profit to be recognized for the year as per accounting standard 7. Almost once again a comprehensive question can be expected in the exams also. First thing first, stage of completion depends upon cost. What is the cost incurred till date? 4 crores divided by total cost estimated to complete the contract. Estimated to complete the contract from now onwards, that is 6 crores. So what is the total estimated cost? 4 plus 6, that is 10 crores. That means the percentage of completion, answer for first question is 40%. For that you need to write the formula, then substitute, get the answer. then this answer is given. Stage of completion is 40%. Then amount of revenue to be recognized. 40% of how much? 40% of contract price. But contract price was originally 12 crores. But now it got escalated by 5%. So now the contract price changes to 12.6 crores. That is the main point. So 12.6 crores into 40%. That is the revenue to be recognized. That comes to how much? 5.04 crores is the revenue that should be recognized. 40% of 12.6 crores, not 12 crores. Why? There is an escalation of 5%, which is agreed, supposed to be agreed. It is mentioned that contract price increased by 5%. Means 12 becomes 12.6. 40% of 12.6 is 5.04 crores is the revenue. See, when 5.04 crores is the total revenue, cost incurred is 4 crores, which means naturally what is the profit for the current year? 1.04 crores. So answers are all given. Revenue 5.04 crores, profit is 1.04 crores. That's it. That is answer for this question. These are the various types of questions that we can expect in Accounting Standard 7. Once again, the essence of the standard has to be always kept in mind. Thorough revision and thorough understanding of various aspects in relation to each accounting standard has to be remembered. Not always we can expect numerical questions. That is why sometimes if theoretical questions, conceptual questions, case-based questions are asked, we should be able to write sufficiently with the correct terminology. A lot of people write something. Maybe they write a correct conclusion also, but still they don't get marks. Why? Because they use all the loose terms, whatever they feel, whatever they think, whatever they heard in the class. That is not going to be enough. You need to use the words which are used in the standard. So with that, we can conclude the discussion on Accounting Standard 7, and in any of the next sessions, we'll discuss another standard. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.